with or without the EU funding, will not leave Mozambique, because they are looting Mozambique. They are looting minerals in Mozambique, and they are making a lot of money by being in Mozambique. Going back to barracks in Rwanda will not be beneficial to them. This is an expeditionary army whose real job is to go to other countries to loot and steal on behalf of Kagame and his regime.
Rwanda has warned it may withdraw its troops from Mozambique's conflict-affected Cabo Delgado province if sustainable international funding is not secured. Rwandan forces were deployed in 2021 at the request of Mozambique to help combat armed groups linked to an Islamist insurgency in the gas-rich region. Kigali says its troops have contributed to stabilizing parts of Cabo Delgado, but says the nation cannot continue without reliable financial support.
So from that video, actually is the latest story on the Rwandan Defense Force. They are trying to blackmail the European Union and the international community because they got sanctioned by the United States for being terrorists. They are the ones in Congo committing atrocities, committing genocide inside Congo. And then when they get sanctioned, they keep trying to basically complain and want the world to hear their story. And this is the same thing we are looking at right now here on the screen. The story was that Rwanda has signaled that it could withdraw its troops from Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province, where they are helping counter deadly insurgent attacks, if the mission was no longer backed by sufficient and predictable external funding. And basically this external funding they are saying is that the EU was played by France, where France wanted the EU to tap into a fund. The EU has a fund called the Peace Fund. So France wanted the EU to tap 40 million a year from that fund to give it to the Rwandan Defense Force, because the Rwandan Defense Force was playing mercenary for the French interest in Mozambique. And I'll be coming to that later. So the EU was sending 20 million in May and another 20 million euros at the end of the year, 40 million. And after the US sanctioned the Rwandan Defense Force, the EU doesn't want to be part of an entity that is sending money to a sanctioned terrorist army, okay, the militia of Rwanda. And now look at what the foreign minister of Rwanda was also trying to say. They always have this, they have to correct someone. They always think that their version of the story is the most correct one. Anyway, he went ahead to correct the Reuters by saying that it is not that Rwanda could withdraw. It is that Rwanda will withdraw its troops from Mozambique if sustainable funding is not secured for its counter-terrorism operation in Cabo Delgado. Now, let's pause there. They are using this threat where they are saying that if they pull out their troops from Mozambique, Mozambique is going to be unpeaceful, right? But the reason why their troops were sanctioned was because they were going to another country of Congo to create instability. So on one hand, they pretend that they are creating stability in one country, and that if they're sanctioned are not lifted, and that if they are not stopped from creating instability in Congo, then Mozambique will meet instability. So what? So does that mean that Mozambique has to be peaceful on the expense of Congo being unstable? Because the same army is creating havoc in Congo, and now they've been sanctioned to stop doing what they're doing in Congo, and they are threatening the international community that, oh, if you do this to us, we are going to create instability in Mozambique. Who cares? Mozambique has its own national army. Let them handle their own issues, but get out of Congo. So that's the scenario. And this came out of the fact that they were sanctioned by the US, as I just said, and the EU is under massive pressure to also match those United States sanctions on Rwanda. There's enough evidence to the reason why the US sanctioned Rwanda. The EU has always known this for many years. They've always known that Rwanda is in Congo under the banner of M23. There have been many UN reports, Human Rights Watch report, United Nations Human Rights Commission report, proving that Rwandan soldiers in Congo are committing acts of atrocities. They are committing genocide upon certain groups in Congo. And the EU has always pretended that they cannot see, but now the US has lifted the lid on this issue, and the EU has now to really show us what they stand for. So they are pressure to also match those sanctions. And it's not just the EU. The United Nations also has been told to stop using Rwandan soldiers as peacekeepers in places like South Sudan, in places like the Central African Republic, now that they are sanctioned. So they have to consider that. And there's an article about it here saying that what the US sanctions on the military of Rwanda means for the UN and the EU. For the EU, the expectation is that they have to match those sanctions. For the UN, they just have to agree that US is one of the top contributor country to the financing of these peacekeepers, and they've sanctioned our military that they cannot finance. So the UN has to just start telling those soldiers that your mission will have to expire earlier than expected. And that's the situation now. And now Rwanda is trying to pretend. And by the way, after they were sanctioned, they tried to send veiled threats to, I don't know who they were trying to threaten, saying that, oh, we are going to start operating nuclear reactors in Rwanda. And for the untrained ear, someone would think they mean that they're also going to start working on developing the bomb, right? And if that's what they are doing, that's their problem. No one cares, because if they have it, other countries will acquire them and they cannot use it. Okay, so I don't know why they were trying to threaten Congo with this nuclear energy stuff. But anyway, let's go back to the story. So the EU funding for Rwanda was always, as I said, 20 million euros every half a year, every 6 months, and then another 20 at the end of the year. So 40 in total. It's a lot of money. And if the Rwandan soldier or Rwandan army cannot deploy their own troops under their own government financing, they have to rely on external funding. That makes them what? A mercenary group. And they are not protecting the interests of either Mozambique or Rwanda. They are actually doing the interests of France. And I'll be explaining that later. So, France didn't know how to explain to their own people that they were financing a mercenary army in Mozambique. So they tried to play around by saying that they told Rwanda, give us 5 years, we are going to get you about 400 million. Okay. And then they went to the parliament and said they are going to finance Rwanda 400 million or 500 million through foreign aid in a span of 5 years. Okay, so that's what this article says. And by the way, there was so many articles trying to mention the same. There was one newspaper in Mozambique back then that picked it and actually tried to ask the same questions. That I remember it was saying this was a newspaper sometime back in 2021. It's called Politica Mozambicana or Mozambique Politico. Anyway, it's a newspaper. And I think it's under the Guardia da Democracia, the Democracy Guardian. It was asking the same question. Is France using development aid to finance the intervention of Rwandan troops in Mozambique? That's what they asked that time in 2021. So as you can see, that's how France tried to figure out how to finance these mercenaries without telling their people that they were using mercenaries. And why am I calling them mercenaries? Okay, so the French energy giant Total is developing massive 30 billion oil fields in the Mozambique province of Cabo Delgado. So when Mozambique found this oil in early 2000, they found a buyer. Japan was willing to buy all that oil, all that gas. But then the problem was that it was found off the shore of Mozambique, where there's a fishing village in a town called Masimbua da Playa. It's a fishing town. And there was the plan to move these people. The government initially sent in their troops. They forced these people, asked them to move. They burnt their villages. There are videos showing the soldiers, the security soldiers and police burning those fishing villages. And they were forced to flee into the mountains. And then the French energy giant came and started constructing its facility there in that small town. The young men of those villages that were moved, who happened to be Muslim, by the way, Mozambique is mostly a Christian country, but there's a section of Mozambique, northeastern part of Mozambique, 1,000 kilometers from the capital Maputo, that is Muslim, that is of Muslim people. So initially the Mozambican government tried to actually say that these people were coming from Tanzania because they spoke Swahili. But then they were reminded, no, there's a part of Mozambique that is actually Swahili. They also have Muslims. As a matter of fact, the word Mozambique is an Islamic Arab name, okay, named after a man called Musa, who used to rule that region. So that's how the name came Mozambique. Musa meaning from the word Musa, Mozambique. I think his name was Musa Abik or something, or Musabika, I think. So that's how the name became Mozambique. The country's name is actually named after an Arab settler who used to live in that part. Anyway, let's go back to the story. So they were forced, being accused that they are foreigners and so on. The young men went to the hills and tried to resist. They formed a resistant army that came down to try to fight and take back their villages. The security Mozambican soldiers were sent in. They committed atrocities, which later really exposed the government there. Now this became international news. Other Muslim groups decided to come in and help and train these young men to defend themselves and their mothers. And that's how the Islamic State and Al-Shabaab sent some of their men to go and fight alongside these Mozambique Muslims. And that's how they were called insurgents. They were even given names as Islamic State insurgents in Mozambique. But these were resistant people, or the resistant in Cabo Delgado. There's an article in one of the big newspapers in Mozambique that says Rwandan company wins $800,000 Mozambique LNG resettlement deal. And the subtitle is, a Rwandan company has won almost $1 million contract to upgrade a resettlement village for people forced to move by the Mozambique LNG project in Cabo Delgado. Now, this LNG project is the Total Energy giant facility. And these people are the people I told you, their villages were burnt. They went into the forest. The young men of those villages formed a resistant army, and that's why Rwandan soldiers are there to fight them. But they also agree that they need to be resettled, and that's why, again, a Rwandan company owned by the president of Rwanda under his company Christo Venture won a tender to construct those houses. So now you get the point of what I'm trying to say. It's all connected. Now let's go to Isco Segulanka. So Isco Segulanka, as a part this article by it's a newspaper in Mozambique called Club of Mozambique by the Mozpax. It's a huge blog in Mozambique business, and this is by the area view of the facility. The facility we are talking about. This used to be villages of those people. They were moved away. They were fishing people. They were pushed away from the coastal areas because the French wanted to build this city where they have to do oil extraction. Anyway, let's go to the story. The story says that facility is worth 20 billion, and they said that Rwanda sent in 4,000 troops to secure the region under an agreement between Mozambique President Philip Nyusi and the Rwandan President Kagame. But in the same article, they say about 1,000 Rwandan soldiers work. Now, they are not part of this 4,000, or maybe they are part of it. I'm not sure. About that Rwandan soldiers are work under contract for Isco Segulanka, which is a joint venture between Rwanda's Isco Global Limited, the company, and a local Mozambique company, which is a company owned by Nyusi, President Nyusi, or the former President Nyusi, providing unarmed guarding services at the liquefied natural gas company in Cabo Delgado province, Total Energy. confirmed to the Financial Times in response to the question. There is a contract and a company registered in Mozambique called Isco Segulanka, which is a company associated with Isco Security in Rwanda. Okay, you can go down here and find it in About Us. Here you see Isco Rwanda, Isco Technology, Isco Segulanka. So one company. This Rwandan company now offers 1,000 of Rwandan soldiers under the contract to protect this facility. This is on top of the 4,000 that are in Cabo Delgado. So my thought is that the 20 or 40 million euros covers the funding of the 4,000 troops, while France and the Total Energy pays the 1,000 under the Isco Segulanka contract. But on top of that, but the same article says that there's another company called Macefield Ventures Limited here. So let me read you that part so that you don't think I'm making up this story. Isco, which is, we said, Crystal Ventures, Macefield Ventures, and the Rwandan government did not respond to several requests. But up here, in the same article, they were saying the Total-led LNG project is also working with a company called Radarscape, which Mozambican corporate records show that it's an indirect subsidiary of Crystal Ventures Limited, international arm called Macefield Ventures. So they were also, so Rwanda has almost 10 companies, all of them linked to Crystal Ventures Limited, all of them linked to the Rwandan president, and they are in Mozambique. Now, Macefield Ventures here is said down here in the article that they are also involved in mining and extraction of rubies in Cabo Delgado. Now, Mozambique is awash with these red rubies, which look like diamonds, and Macefield Venture Limited, the company owned by Kagame, is there to extract. And even the Wikipedia page here actually talks about it. It was saying that this company, let me read the part from the Wikipedia. So even though it has links with Total Energies natural gas project on the Afungi Peninsula and signed an agreement with the ROC to purchase 12,000 hectares of land from the ROC. This is Macefield Ventures. These Macefield Ventures, which initially was called Macefield Congo Holding, but then it has moved to Mozambique, bought 12,000 hectares of land in Mozambique to do ruby extraction. They are mining in Mozambique and they are mining rubies in Mozambique. And I'm not the one saying it, by the way. It's on the website Macefield, so macefieldventures.com. And when you look at the map where they say about us, they have the huge map of Africa and Mozambique is there. So they are the ones who are telling me where they are. It's not me making up this story. And they are there to do mining of rubies. Now, you may be wondering, why am I telling you all these things? So I want to explain to you that the Rwandan soldiers are not going anywhere. They were just trying to blackmail the EU. So I'm going back to the tweet. The Rwandan government, the Rwandan army are so deeply involved in Mozambique. That's what I wanted to say. So they are so deeply involved in Mozambique. They are in mining. They are in security. They are buying 12,000 hectares of land in the same region where these people are, the insurgent, in quotes, the resistance of northern Mozambique are located. They are even winning tenders to construct houses for those people who are displaced. So the same companies want to construct villages for these people who are displaced, which is the reason why these people are actually resisting to begin with. And they are now even buying their land from the government. So they are buying the land that belongs to these people. And now you want to tell me that those soldiers will leave because the EU has refused to send them $40 million, 40 million euros a year. No, they won't leave. Or maybe some of them will, of course, but not all of them. Why? Because 1,000 of them are tied under a contract by the Iskosegranka to protect the liquefied natural gas facility by this Total. Okay, so those ones 100% they are not going anywhere. On top of that, Macefield, which bought 12,000 hectares in that region to extract rubies, will need some soldiers to protect it from the real owners of the land. So another 1,000 are not going anywhere. So in total, 2,000 Rwandan soldiers, with or without the EU funding, will not leave Mozambique, because they are looting Mozambique. They are looting minerals in Mozambique, and they are making a lot of money by being in Mozambique. Going back to barracks in Rwanda will not be beneficial to them. This is an expeditionary army whose real job is to go to other countries to loot and steal on behalf of Kagame and his regime. So we have to agree on that. And that's why I was just telling you all that story, so that you flow with me.